Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt confused in a relationship, but couldn't quite put your finger on why? One moment he's all in, making you feel like the center of his world, and the next, he's distant, dismissive. And you're left overthinking every single thing you said. You tell yourself, maybe I am just being too sensitive, but deep down, something doesn't feel right. And here's the truth no one is saying loud enough. If you feel like you're constantly questioning your worth, your voice, or your sanity, twit's not just in your head. That's a red flag. This video isn't about dramatic behavior or obvious toxicity. It is about the subtle patterns, emotional mind games, the disappearing acts, the low-key disrespect, knip away at your self-esteem slowly, quietly, until you're not even sure who you are anymore. If he does any of these 5 things, you need to hear this, not for him, but for you. Because by the end of this video, you're not just going to see the red flags, you're going to understand them. And finally have the clarity to walk away from confusion and toward the peace you've always deserved. So don't look away. This is the truth you've been avoiding. And it starts right now. There's a moment in every unhealthy relationship when your gut tries to speak. It gets silenced. Not by force, not by shouting, but by something more subtle, dismissal. You were halfway through expressing something that hurt you, and suddenly it is not about what you feel. It's about how you are being, too sensitive, or overreacting, or dramatic, if you've ever been made to question your own emotional experience. Pay close attention. This is not just emotional immaturity. It's a red flag. Let us get this straight. Your feelings are not a debate. They are not up for negotiation. You are allowed to say, hey, that thing you did made me feel ignored, without being met with rolled eyes, mockery, or flat-out denial. But when someone consistently invalidates your emotions, what they really doing is slowly dismantling your self-trust. It might not look like manipulation at first. It might sound like a joke or a sarcastic, oh my God. I didn't even mean it like that, but the impact is always the same. You start shrinking your feelings down to match their comfort. You stop bringing up what hurts. You begin choosing silence over honesty. Not because you want peace, but because you've been trained to believe that your emotions are a burden. Here's the problem. This pattern teaches you that conflict is dangerous, that being honest will cost you the relationship. So you internalize everything, and that turns into resentment, anxiety, emotional exhaustion. And worst of all, it turns into self-doubt. You wonder, maybe I am being too much. No, you are not. You are being human. Invalidation is a tool used by emotionally unavailable people who haven't yet developed the capacity to sit in discomfort with someone else's truth. And if you are with someone who can't hear your truth, the relationship will never grow. Because emotional safety isn't about constant agreement. It is about being heard even when the other person doesn't fully understand. It is about someone saying, I didn't realize that hurt you, I see it now. Not, you're crazy. That wasn't a big deal, and let me tell you. This kind of invalidation doesn't just show up in arguments. It sneaks in during moments you try to celebrate yourself. You share something you are proud of, and they downplay it. You talk about a boundary you're trying to set, and they roll their eyes. That is emotional immaturity wrapped in casual cruelty. It is not something you fix with patience or effort. You don't need to prove your worth to someone who keeps stepping on it. Here's the truth no one tells you soon enough. When someone keeps invalidating you, they retail showing you the ceiling of their emotional capacity. They're telling you, this is as far as I can go. I can't meet you where you are, and you need to believe them the first time. You can't build connection in a space where your emotions are dismissed like noise. Love can't thrive in silence. Real love listens. It leans in. It may not always understand right away, but it never makes you feel wrong for feeling. There's a difference between healthy disagreement and emotional invalidation. In a healthy relationship, someone can challenge your perspective without diminishing your experience. They can disagree while still making space for you to be heard, but in an emotionally unsafe space. You are constantly walking on eggshells, editing your emotions to avoid being labeled as too much, and that's not love. That's fear with a pretty disguise. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling smaller than when you entered it, it's not you. It's the painter. And that painter needs to be interrupted before it becomes the soundtrack of yourself. Because the most dangerous part about repeated invalidation is that, over time, you stop speaking up. Then one day you look in the mirror and realize you've become a watered-down version of yourself. Let become someone made you feel like your emotions were too loud. Let us be clear. The right person won't always get it right, but they will try. They'll show up for the uncomfortable conversations. They will stay present. They will make space. Because emotional connection isn't just about love, it's about respect. And the moment someone makes you feel like your truth is an inconvenience, it is no longer just a misunderstanding. It is a warning. One that you must learn to hear before it becomes your norm. There is something intoxicating about unpredictability, especially in relationships. One day, he's texting you first thing in the morning, showering you with compliments, making you feel like you're the only person in the world he sees. The next day, silence. No response. Cold energy. And suddenly, you are wondering if you did something wrong. Did you say too much? Were you too available? You start replaying every word you said, every emoji you sent, trying to locate the moment he began to pull away. But here is the thing. This isn't your fault. It is a signal. And it is a red flag that many people ignore because it feels so much like passion. Inconsistency keeps you in a constant state of craving. That high you felt when he was warm, when he was present and affectionate, becomes addictive. And so, when he pulls away or goes quiet, you try harder. You reach out. You justify. You tell yourself he is just busy. You convince yourself not to overthink. But the truth is, love shouldn't feel like a guessing game. Healthy love has rhythm, consistency, a steady presence that doesn't make you question your worth every other day. This hot and cold behavior often gets mistaken for mystery. It is not. It is emotional immaturity. It is someone who wants the emotional reward of connection without the responsibility that comes with it. They like the thrill of closeness, but once it starts to feel real, once vulnerability enters the room, they can retreat. They will come close just long enough to keep you hooked, but they will never stay long enough to build anything lasting. And every time they reappear with charm and attention, you forget the confusion they left behind. That is how the cycle continues. You start adjusting your expectations. Instead of asking, "Is this relationship fulfilling?" you begin asking, "Will today be a good day or a cold one?" You're no longer looking for consistency, just chasing those rare moments when he lights up your phone and makes you feel seen again. And the tragic part? You start seeing those moments as evidence of love. But attention is not love. Presence is not commitment. A sweet message after days of neglect is not a sign that he is changing. It is often just a reset of the cycle. There is a particular kind of confusion that this inconsistency creates. It messes with your internal compass. You lose track of what you deserve because you are too busy trying to make sense of his behavior. You might even begin to blame yourself for his absence. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I'm being too needy. But healthy relationships don't leave you decoding emotional signals like you are trying to crack a secret code. If someone truly cares about you, you won't be left in the dark, wondering where you stand. You'll feel emotionally safe, not emotionally scattered. What's really happening here is a form of emotional control. Whether he realizes it or not, This inconsistency creates power imbalance. He is training you to respond to crumbs of affection like they were proof of love. And the more inconsistent he is, the more desperate you become for those crumbs. You adjust your behavior. You make excuses for him. You lower your standards in the name of patience. But patience should never mean tolerating emotional unpredictability that makes you question your value. His kind of dynamic isn't always loud. Sometimes it is tall. He'll call you his favorite person one week, and then ghost you the next. He will make plans with you and then cancel without much explanation. And instead of apologizing or addressing the hurt, he'll show up a few days later with some charm and attention, acting like nothing happened. And because you miss the connection, you let him back in. But nothing changes. That pattern becomes the relationship. Up and down. Warm and cold. Hope and confusion. Over and over again. You don't need someone who only shows up when it is convenient. You don't need love that feels like an emotional roller coaster. Real connection is built in the small, consistent moments, when someone keeps showing up, even when the excitement fades, even when life gets busy, even when things aren't perfect. If someone's presence in your life feels more like a guessing game than a grounding force, then what you are experiencing isn't a mystery, it is instability. And instability is not a foundation for love. It is a recipe for anxiety masquerading as chemistry. There is a distinct difference between making a mistake and refusing to take responsibility for it. Everybody messes up. That is human. But when someone refuses to own their words, their actions, or the impact they have on others, especially you, take not just a personality flaw. That is a red flag. Accountability is the foundation of emotional maturity, and without it, there is no trust. There is no growth. There is no real intimacy. What you're left with is deflection, blame, excuses, and an exhausting cycle where everything somehow becomes your fault. When he avoids accountability, it starts to tally. Maybe he is late to something important, and instead of simply saying, "I am sorry. I should have left earlier," he blames the traffic, his alarm, the weather, anything but himself. You brush it off. Because it's not a big deal, right? But then it happens again. You bring up a moment where you felt hurt. And instead of listening, he gets defensive. He tells you you're misinterpreting things. He says you're always trying to start drama. Suddenly, the conversation is no longer about your pain. It's about your tone, your timing, your expectations. He twists the narrative so that you're the one apologizing for having an emotional reaction. His behavior trains you to self-censor. You stop bringing things up, not because they don't matter, but because you're tired of being made to feel like you. Retire always the one in the wrong. When someone avoids accountability, they create an emotional environment where honesty feels dangerous, where vulnerability becomes a liability. You begin to internalize the idea that bringing up your needs will only result in conflict or coldness or emotional shutdown. And that is not just unfair, it's corrosive. It chips away at your ability to advocate for yourself, to speak up when something is not okay. The truth is, someone who avoids accountability is often far more concerned with protecting their ego than preserving the relationship. Their need to be right overrides their capacity to be real. They deflect blame with skill, sometimes even charm. They might use humor to brush things off, turn things into a joke to avoid seriousness. Or they might flip the script and play the victim, saying things like, "I can never do anything right," or "You're always mad at me," making you feel guilty for even bringing something up in the first place. It is not just frustrating, it's manipulative. Without accountability, there is no true repair. And every healthy relationship needs moments of repair. Disagreements are inevitable. Hurt feelings will happen. But healing only occurs when both people can say, "Yeah, I see what I did there. I am sorry." I want to do better. That requires emotional courage. It requires someone to sit with discomfort without trying to escape it or weaponize it. If he can't do that, you're not in a partnership to cure in a dynamic where you're carrying the emotional labor of two people. His lack of accountability can also show up in how he talks about his past. Pay attention to how he speaks about his exes, his family, his former bosses or friends. If every relationship ended because of someone else's craziness, if every falling out is framed as someone doing him wrong, and he never once shares what he might have contributed, watch that. It is easy to overlook in the beginning. In fact, it might sound like he has just been misunderstood or hurt. But people who constantly paint themselves as the victim often haven't done the work to examine their own behavior. And if he hasn't done that work, he will repeat the same patterns with you. When someone is allergic to accountability, they create a dynamic where they stay protected while you stay exposed. You're always the one apologizing. You're always the one adjusting. You're always the one bending over backwards trying to keep the peace. And eventually, that peace becomes one-sided. You become emotionally exhausted, walking on eggshells, doubting your instincts. That's not what love should feel like. Love should make you feel seen and supported, not silenced and small. A man who avoids accountability is not just protecting himself from discomfort, he risks preventing the relationship from evolving into anything meaningful, anything lasting, anything real. Because without accountability, there is no repair, and without repair, there is no trust. Boundaries are not walls. They routine not threats. They tear not about control. Boundaries are simply the lines that define where you end and someone else begins. They read the invisible framework that protects your peace, your values, your emotional energy. They read how you teach people how to treat you, and if you've ever set a boundary, whether it's about time, emotional availability, physical space, communication style, jerky repeatedly pushes past it, ignores it, jokes about it, or reacts with frustration, what you're seeing is not confusion. It is disrespect. And it is a red flag hiding in plain sight. The earliest signs often come in subtle forms. Maybe you say you need a night to yourself, and instead of respecting that, he shows up anyway. Or maybe you ask for more communication, and he agrees in the moment, but nothing changes. Or perhaps you set a boundary around your pace, how fast you want to move, how much time you need to feel safe, he tells you are being difficult or too guarded. It starts to feel like your needs are being treated as inconveniences, not as something worthy of care or curiosity. That's when the erosion begins. Not just of your boundaries, but of your self-trust. The moment someone pushes back against a clearly stated boundary, they revealing how they view your autonomy. People who are emotionally mature don't need to agree with your boundaries to respect them. They understand that your needs don't require their permission. But when he gets defensive, passive, aggressive, or dismissive in response to a boundary, he is showing you that he is more interested in access than connection. He wants what he wants, and your comfort becomes secondary to his convenience. His lack of respect can show up in different ways. It might look like pressuring you to share more than you are ready to. It might look like making jokes about topics you've already said are off limits. It might look like continually interrupting your personal time with texts or calls, even after you've said you need space. And the most damaging part, the more this happens, the more you start adjusting your boundaries, not because they've changed, but because you feel like honoring them will cost you the relationship. That's when you know you're not in a partnership, you're in a performance, and the performance is always the same. You say what you need. He doesn't listen. You let it slide. He does it again. Eventually, you stop speaking up altogether. Not because your needs disappeared, but because somewhere along the way, you were made to feel like they were too much. That you were asking for too many calls, too much space, too much honesty, too much commitment. But let us be clear. Boundaries are not about being demanding, they're about being intentional. They rub out protecting your emotional bandwidth and building a relationship that honors mutual respect. Sometimes the disrespect isn't loud. It is not aggressive. It comes wrapped in charm. He might smile while ignoring your no. He might say things like, "I know you said you weren't ready, but I figured I'd try anyway." That's not persistence, and not disguised as effort. Because someone who genuinely respects you won't try to emotionally manipulate their way past your limits. They will honor them, June, when it's inconvenient. Especially when it's inconvenient. And that's what separates emotional safety from emotional volatility. It's also important to note that when someone repeatedly ignores your boundaries, they return, undermining your ability to feel safe in the relationship. Safety isn't built on chemistry. It is built on consistency. On knowing that when you say, "This doesn't work for me," the other person doesn't try to argue you out of it. They listen. They adapt. They take responsibility for the impact of their behavior. That's what emotional safety looks like. It's not perfection. It's responsiveness. It's someone who hears your no and doesn't turn it into an argument, a guilt trip, or a disappearing act. When boundaries are violated enough times, you start living in a state of quiet discomfort. You're in the relationship, but you're not at ease. You're smiling, but you're also bracing. Waiting for the next time you'll have to explain yourself, defend your needs, or recover from being made to feel unreasonable. That's not a relationship. Tightness, emotional strain disguised as compatibility. Because no matter how much attraction or connection you feel, if someone consistently dismisses your boundaries, they return not loving you, to create or managing you. They return bending your comfort to suit their desires. And that is never the foundation of something healthy, grounded, or respectful. One of the most telling signs that something is off in a relationship is not what's being said. It is how your body feels when you are with him. It is not always loud. It is not always dramatic. Sometimes, it is just a constant, low-grade tension in your chest. A tightening in your stomach when his name pops up on your phone. A quiet anxiety that follows you around even when things are supposedly going well. You keep trying to tell yourself everything is fine. That you're just being sensitive. That maybe this is just how relationships feel. But deep down, there is a part of you that knows love shouldn't feel like this. It shouldn't feel like walking on a tightrope in your own life. That gnawing anxiety isn't irrational. It is not something to ignore or push through. It is your nervous system responding to emotional unpredictability. It is what happens when the person who is supposed to be your safe space is the same person causing emotional turbulence. One day, he is attentive and sweet, and you start to relax, thinking maybe things are turning a corner. The next day, he is distant, distracted, or passive, aggressive, and suddenly you're spiraling, wondering what you did wrong. Overanalyzing every message, trying to decode his tone. That roller coaster isn't just exhausting, it's damaging. It teaches you that love equals uncertainty, and that peace must be earned. Not expected, you find yourself constantly anticipating the next emotional shift. Will he be in a good mood? Will he respond this time? Should you bring that thing up, or will it start a fight? You start strategizing instead of speaking freely. You weigh your words like they're weapons. You become so focused on keeping things calm that you lose sight of whether your needs are even being met. That is the danger of emotional inconsistency. Twitch doesn't just affect the relationship. It reshapes your relationship with yourself. You stop trusting your instincts. You question your right to ask for more. You convince yourself that anxiety is just the price of closeness in a healthy relationship. Your body should feel like it can exhale. You should feel grounded, not guarded. But when someone is emotionally unreliable or dismissive, your body stays in a constant state of alert. You might even start mistaking that anxiety for passion. It's a trick your brain plays when emotional chaos becomes the norm. The highs feel euphoric only because the lows have become so familiar. And so you start chasing that next high, waiting for the moment he softens, apologizes, or reminds you of the version of him that made you feel chosen. But those moments never last long enough to make you feel secure. They're bandages, not solutions. The worst part is how invisible this anxiety can be from the outside. People might look at the two of you and see chemistry, charm, or even compatibility. They don't see the nights you lie awake trying to decode a text. They don't see how many times you've had to talk yourself down from crying over a dismissive comment or a broken promise. They don't feel the emotional labor you carry just to keep the connection from unraveling. That kind of hidden exhaustion takes a toll, not just on your heart, but on your identity. You start becoming someone you don't recognize. Someone who overcompensates, over-apologizes, over-functions just to feel worthy of basic emotional safety. And emotional safety is not a luxury. It's a necessity. It's the oxygen of a healthy relationship. It's the knowing that even when things get hard, you're not alone in it. That your emotions won't be weaponized against you. That you won't be punished for being vulnerable. When you're safe, love expands. When you're anxious, love becomes a game of survival. And when survival is the default mode of your relationship, you stop dreaming, you stop growing, and you start shrinking into a version of yourself built for tolerance, not joy. That anxiety you keep trying to suppress is data. It is not drama. It is not weakness. It is not neediness. It is your inner world telling you that something isn't right. And if everything on the outside looks good, listen to it. Pay attention to what your body knows before your mind tries to explain it away. Because when your nervous system is constantly bracing, there's a reason. You don't have to justify your unease with evidence or proof. The emotional state of your relationship is measured by the state of your inner peace. And if anxiety is your constant companion, it's not love. It's emotional turbulence disguised as intimacy. Let us be honest. When you care about someone, it's easy to minimize the signs. You want to believe the best in them. You focus on the good days, the charming moments, the flashes of potential. But red flags aren't always loud. Sometimes they whisper. They show up in the way your feelings get dismissed, in how your boundaries are crossed, in the silence after you open your heart. And if you constantly justifying their behavior while silencing your needs, that's not love. It's emotional survival. A healthy relationship doesn't leave you second, guessing your worth. It doesn't make you feel like you are too much or not enough. It doesn't punish you for speaking up or make you walk on eggshells just to keep the peace. It is not perfect, but it is safe. It is consistent. It is respectful. And most of all, Tiger feels peaceful. Not chaotic. You are not asking for too much by wanting someone who shows up, who listens, who takes accountability, who respects your space, and who makes you feel emotionally secure. Those aren't high standards. Those are the bare minimum for love that's worth keeping. So the next time you feel that quiet discomfort, the next time your gut tells you something's off, listen. You don't need more proof. You don't need to wait for it to get worse. Red flags are not invitations to fix someone. They resinders to protect yourself. You deserve love that feels like freedom, not fear. Like calm, not confusion. Like truth, not guessing. And the moment you stop settling for less, you make space for the kind of love that honors who you truly are.